Let me talk to you straight. There comes a point in life when you look in the mirror and realize you've spent more energy fixing everyone else than taking care of yourself. You've poured out, you've stretched thin, you've carried weight that wasn't yours. And somewhere along the way, you stopped hearing your own voice. If that feels close to home, don't look down, look up, because this moment is not a breaking point, it's a rebuilding point. Today, I'm speaking to the part of you that's tired of shrinking, tired of pleasing, tired of losing pieces of yourself just to keep the peace. I'm speaking to the part of you that knows it's time to stand back up, set boundaries, choose growth, and put yourself first without guilt. Rebuilding your personality doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering who you were before life hardened you, before people drained you, before expectations shaped you. It's about getting your identity back and walking with your head lifted because you finally know your worth. This is your moment to rise. This is your moment to return to yourself. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It's an act of survival, and it's one of the first steps toward rebuilding who you are. Many people grow up believing that they have to stay available for everyone all the time. They think they have to carry every responsibility, solve every problem, and show up even when they're drained. After a while, you stop noticing how much of yourself you give away, and you start believing that this is just how life works. But somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet voice that knows you've been giving more than you can afford. That voice becomes softer every time you ignore it. Putting yourself first is how you get that voice back. When you choose yourself, you're not turning away from others. You're turning toward your own strength so you can show up with honesty and balance. Life has a way of piling things on you until you forget what it feels like to breathe freely. You push through exhaustion. You smile when you're hurting, and you pretend you're fine just to keep the world steady for everyone else. But people who keep everything steady eventually shake on the inside. Choosing yourself stops the shaking. It creates space for clarity, peace, and purpose to return. Many people confuse self-care with selfishness because they've been conditioned to believe their worth is tied to how much they can endure. But endurance without restoration breaks you. When you choose yourself, you allow your mind to settle, your heart to breathe, and your focus to sharpen. You begin to understand what drains you and what strengthens you. You start recognizing the people who take without returning anything. You start seeing the routines that leave you empty. And once you see all that, you can no longer live on autopilot. Choosing yourself teaches you to value your time in a different way. You stop rushing to be everywhere at once. You stop giving explanations for every decision. You stop apologizing for needing space. You understand that real strength isn't measured by how much weight you carry, but by how wisely you manage your energy. Your future depends on the choices you make today, and one of the most important choices is deciding that you matter. When you put yourself first, you rebuild your foundation. You speak with a different tone, walk with a different confidence, and protect your peace with a different level of intention. You become stronger, not harder. You become clearer, not colder, and slowly the world around you adjusts, because once you choose yourself, everything else starts to fall into place. You are never locked into the person you used to be. Your personality is not a fixed structure that can't be touched or rebuilt. It's shaped by your experiences, your environment, your relationships, and the seasons you've lived through. When you understand that, you stop feeling guilty for wanting to change. You stop feeling afraid of outgrowing the version of yourself that once helped you survive, but no longer helps you grow. Rebuilding your personality is an act of courage because it requires honesty about who you are today and who you want to become tomorrow. There comes a time when you realize certain habits no longer reflect your values. You notice you've picked up behaviors from people who drained you. You see traits in yourself that were formed by stress, not by choice. Maybe you learned to stay quiet to avoid conflict. Maybe you learned to always agree so you wouldn't lose people. Maybe you learned to shrink so others could feel comfortable. These patterns shape your personality, but they don't define your identity. When you decide to rebuild, you start separating the real you from the version that life pressured you into becoming. Rebuilding doesn't have to be dramatic. It begins with small choices. You allow yourself to speak more clearly. You start saying what you mean without fearing how others might react. You practice being present instead of always being in survival mode. You listen to your needs instead of pushing them aside. As you do this, you feel a shift inside. Your confidence grows quietly. Your sense of direction returns. Your presence becomes stronger and more grounded. People around you might not understand your changes at first because they became comfortable with who you were, not who you're becoming. They may expect you to stay predictable, even when predictability was hurting you. But rebuilding your personality means honoring the version of you that wants a better life. It means giving yourself permission to evolve without explanation. Growth is personal, and no one gets to validate or approve it. What matters is that you're becoming someone you can respect. As you rebuild, you begin to notice how differently you handle life. You respond instead of reacting. You choose peace over chaos. You protect your space instead of letting everyone occupy it. You understand your emotions with more clarity. This is what rebuilding looks like. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the person you were always meant to be, with more strength, more awareness, and more confidence than before. Boundaries are often misunderstood, yet they are one of the clearest signs of self-respect. When you start setting them, you're not pushing people away. You're protecting the parts of you that have been stretched, drained, and overlooked. Many people spend years saying yes when they mean no, tolerating behavior that chips away at their peace, and staying quiet to avoid being judged. Over time, you start feeling small in your own life because everything and everyone gets access to you. Boundaries change that. They remind you that your time, energy, and emotional space are valuable. Setting boundaries is not about building walls. It's about creating healthy limits so you can stay balanced. It's the moment you recognize that not everyone deserves the same level of access to you. Some people only show up when they need something. Some people take your kindness for granted. Some people drain you without even realizing it. When you set boundaries, you're simply acknowledging the truth about what you can handle and what you can no longer accept. The first shift happens inside you. You stop giving explanations for every decision. You stop feeling guilty for taking time for yourself. You stop apologizing for needing rest, clarity, or distance. You begin to understand that your peace is not negotiable. This inner shift changes the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the way you respond to pressure. You start showing up with a stronger sense of identity because you're no longer letting the world shape your priorities. When you set boundaries, some people may react as if you've changed, but you're not changing. You're returning to who you were before you learned to stretch yourself too thin. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries often struggle with your new strength, but that's not your burden to carry. You don't set boundaries to control others. You set them to protect your well-being. It's about honoring your emotional and mental space so you can grow without constantly being drained. Over time, boundaries open the door to healthier relationships. You start attracting people who respect your limits instead of testing them. You build connections based on mutual respect instead of one-sided effort. You feel more present because you're no longer overwhelmed by commitments you didn't want in the first place. Boundaries teach others how to treat you, but more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. They help you reclaim your voice, your confidence, and your sense of worth. Once you learn to set them, you walk through life with a quiet strength that can't be shaken. There's a moment in life when you realize your voice didn't disappear. It just got buried under years of being quiet, being careful, and being afraid of disappointing people. Healing your voice is not about becoming loud. It's about becoming honest with yourself again. It's about returning to the place inside you where your truth lives, the place that got muted when you were trying to survive situations that made you feel small. When you begin to rebuild your personality, your voice becomes one of the first things that rises back up. For a long time, you may have learned to silence your thoughts because speaking up felt risky. You didn't want conflict. You didn't want rejection. You didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. So you filtered your emotions, softened your opinions, and carried your pain quietly. That silence becomes a habit, and after a while, you start believing your voice doesn't matter. But deep down, a part of you knows the truth. Every time you stay silent about what hurts you, you teach people that your feelings can be ignored. Healing your voice means allowing yourself to speak without apologizing for existing. It means trusting that your emotions are real, your needs are valid, and your thoughts carry weight. You begin to express yourself with clarity instead of fear. You say what you mean, not what you think people want to hear. And with each honest word, your confidence slowly rises. Your voice returns with strength, not aggression. It returns with certainty, not hesitation. It returns with purpose. You also start noticing how people respond when you no longer hide your truth. Some respect you more because they finally understand where you stand. Others may pull away because they were comfortable with the version of you that stayed quiet. But healing your voice is not about pleasing anyone. It's about choosing courage over silence. It's about refusing to keep shrinking just to make others comfortable. As your voice heals, your inner world shifts. You become more grounded in your identity. You feel lighter because you're no longer carrying emotions that were never expressed. You make clearer decisions because you've stopped ignoring your own intuition. You move through life with more confidence because you're finally aligned with what you think, what you feel, and what you say. When your voice returns, your power returns with it. You begin to live with a sense of freedom and authenticity that feels natural, not forced. And the more you honor that voice, the stronger it becomes. Letting go of old versions of yourself can feel uncomfortable because those versions carried you through seasons that were heavy, confusing, or painful. They protected you. They helped you survive situations you didn't know how to handle. But survival mode shapes habits that don't belong in your future. At some point, you realize you're holding on to patterns that were only meant to get you through a moment, not guide the rest of your life. Rebuilding your personality requires releasing the identity that was built from fear, stress, and emotional pressure. There are parts of you that were created by circumstances, not choice. Maybe you became overly cautious because life disappointed you. Maybe you became quiet because speaking up once cost you something. Maybe you became overly agreeable because you were afraid of losing people. These traits become a comfort zone. Even when they drain you, letting go of these old versions doesn't mean denying your past. It means thanking it for carrying you and choosing not to let it define you. As you release those outdated versions, you start to understand that outgrowing yourself is a sign of strength. Growth often requires stepping away from identities that once felt safe. You might notice you don't react the same way to things that used to trigger you. You stop giving energy to drama. You stop chasing validation. You stop participating in cycles that kept you stuck. This shift is subtle at first, but it becomes more visible as you choose peace over chaos and clarity over confusion. Letting go also means forgiving yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. You stop replaying old moments and criticizing who you used to be. You recognize that growth isn't a straight path. It's a constant process of shedding layers that no longer fit. When you release old versions of yourself, you make room for new strengths, new habits, and new ways of thinking. You open space for a more grounded identity to emerge. People around you may not understand your transformation. They might still expect you to act like the older version of yourself, the one who tolerated everything, stayed quiet, or accepted less than you deserved. But you're not obligated to keep living up to someone else's memory of you. Your evolution is personal. Your growth is allowed. As you let go, you feel lighter. You feel more aligned with what you want instead of what you fear. You begin to move through life with intention instead of survival. And slowly, You step into a version of yourself that feels stronger, clearer, and more authentic than anything you've been before. Your environment plays a powerful role in shaping who you become, often without you realizing it. The people you spend time with, the conversations you entertain, the habits you see every day, and the energy you keep around you all influence your personality. When you're surrounded by negativity, you start thinking in negative patterns. When you're around people who don't grow, you begin to settle. When you stay in spaces that drain you, you lose sight of your own potential. Rebuilding your personality starts with paying attention to the environment that feeds your mind and spirit. Many people try to change their lives while remaining in the same surroundings that broke them. They want peace, but stay around chaos. They want clarity, but live in noise. They want confidence, but stay near people who doubt them. You can't rebuild yourself on a foundation that keeps shaking. When your environment is emotional quicksand, you can't rise. The first step is recognizing who and what influences your mindset the most. As you rebuild, you start to notice the difference between people who fuel your growth and people who limit it. Some challenge you to improve, some encourage your ideas, some remind you of your worth. These individuals help you stretch into a stronger version of yourself. On the other hand, there are people who drain your ideas, dismiss your efforts, or hold on to the old version of you because it benefits them. When you become aware of this, it becomes easier to decide where your energy goes. Changing your environment doesn't always mean cutting everyone off. Sometimes it means creating emotional distance. Sometimes it means limiting access to your personal space. Sometimes it means seeking new experiences, reading new perspectives, or spending more time alone so you can hear your own thoughts clearly. It's about choosing surroundings that bring out your best instead of your worst. Your environment also includes your daily habits. What you watch, what you listen to, what you consume mentally and emotionally all shape your mindset. When you choose uplifting environments, even in small ways, your personality shifts. Your confidence grows because you're no longer being drained by hidden influences. Your clarity strengthens because you're not battling constant noise. Your focus sharpens because you've removed distractions that kept you stuck. Rebuilding your personality becomes easier when your environment supports your growth. When you protect your space, you protect your identity. When you choose surroundings that inspire you, you rise naturally. Over time, you notice you're becoming calmer, stronger, more intentional, and more aligned with the person you want to be. The right environment doesn't just influence you, it transforms you.